Well, as things slowly start to return to normal, we've already started to see the return of mass shootings in this country, reinforcing the need to make sure our children are prepared for the worst.
But in the age of social distancing, how do lockdown drills work? Are kids now less prepared? Spotlight on America's Josie Sturman investigates.
Locks, lights, out of sight. Those are the simple steps many students across the country are taught to follow as they practice for a possible threat in school.
And so when we talk about the reason we're doing lockdown drills, it's to build that muscle memory. So if the worst day ever did come and your mind is trying to process everything going on around you, your body does what it's trained to do.
Jacqueline Schildkraut knows more about these drills than most. She's a researcher and criminal justice professor at the State University of New York at Oswego.
Anytime that we hear one of these calls being made, we have to make sure that we're listening.
When Spotlight on America first spoke with her last year, she was studying the effectiveness of lockdown drills, training and observing thousands of students and educators in Syracuse, New York. Then the pandemic hit. The threat of school shootings was rapidly eclipsed by the health crisis. But now Schildkraut tells us the threats we didn't have to think about for nearly a year are back.
The more that people are back out in public and things are returning to normal, we're seeing more mass shootings. So we can obviously expect that as schools are starting to return to normal, that, school shootings will also return as well.
We've seen that already with at least 2 school shootings in Arkansas and Idaho in just the last few weeks, serving as a reminder about the need for school systems to prepare for the worst. But how do they do that in the midst of a pandemic? Of the 13 states one study shows specifically require lockdown drills, Spotlight on America discovered a divide. While we found about half made no update to their safety plans, the others did acknowledge the need for COVID planning and issued new guidance for drills, things like using masks and social distancing, with some states like Minnesota even giving the option to run drills with staff only, or New York telling students to stay in their seats instead of moving to safe corners to hide.
You guys are going to hear that information from your principal.
For Schildkraut and the students she continues to train, it's about finding the balance, preparing for one potentially deadly threat while making sure kids aren't exposed to another.
Because one thing that's really important when we're practicing is we want to deal with the immediate threat. So in a drill, that immediate threat is, of course, COVID. If it was an actual active shooter or other emergency within the building, that would take precedent.
It's part of the country's new normal, she told us, being agile enough to adapt to all potential threats while keeping students both safe and healthy. I'm Josie Sturman for Spotlight on America.